G'day guys, Tills20 here and welcome back to Springfield. I thought I'd treat you guys with some nighttime shots of Springfield because the city is looking pretty nice at night. We've got some really nice lights lighting up some of these more iconic areas of Springfield, and the city is really starting to come together, especially after this episode. It is really starting to fill out. In today's episode, we are going to be building Bumtown. We have been trying to build this for the last couple of weeks, but the location just hasn't been right. But we have changed the location now. We are building over in this area, which was originally designated for Little Italy, but I think that Bumtown would be better suited over here, mostly because the train line really needs to be separating the nice part of Springfield to Bumtown, which is not the nice part of Springfield, and I just felt like we needed to get that exactly right, and I think this is a really great location for it. Now, before I get too far into this episode, I do just want to say, if I wasn't doing a recreation of Springfield from The Simpsons, I wouldn't be calling a neighborhood like this Bumtown, because obviously it is pretty disrespectful to be calling people who are homeless bums. So it is definitely not a name I would be choosing for a suburb that I'd be creating, but to stay true to The Simpsons, which is a comedy, a cartoon, and to stay true to Springfield, we got to build this place. It is very iconic. So much takes place in Bumtown, aka Junkieville, aka Skid Row. There is a lot of mentions to this suburb, and outside of Evergreen Terrace, I feel like this place is probably mentioned the most. Not that it's mentioned all the time, but a lot of things take place here. And even some of the earliest episodes, season 2, there's still some references to Bumtown. So got to build it. And I have to admit, I had a lot of fun doing it. And I think the reason why I did enjoy doing it so much is I do really love being able to create different parts of cities that have very distinct characteristics. And it's not just social class, but even, you know, what type of neighborhood this is and who might live in a place like this, or where industry starts, or even the different types of industry and why they exist in those areas. And this is just one of those areas where you go, okay, why is this place not very nice? Like, why, what are the differences? Why is this so close to the downtown and so close to neighborhoods that are much nicer? And then you cross the rail line and then all of a sudden you're in Bumtown and things aren't quite as nice. So it was quite a lot of fun putting that story into this and trying to figure out what makes Bumtown so crummy. And what I sort of imagined is that this is a little bit of an industrial or an old industrial hub, hence the reason why you got these train lines, and we're going to be placing that a bit of industry surrounding the main commercial and residential areas of Bumtown, just to give it that little bit more of a narrative to sort of get an idea of why this area might not be quite as nice. I reckon there's a lot of old industry here, a lot of old factories. I reckon this suburb is quite old. A lot of people have moved here for the industry, and then industry, of course, has moved out of the city and further around the outer skirts. So a lot of this industrial areas are now abandoned. So that's the narrative behind Bumtown. Not that I needed to do it, but it's always fun to sort of give this place a little bit of a storyline, because I don't think that really exists within The Simpsons. It's just a suburb that exists. So what we've been up to, I've just been figuring out the train line. This was not possible in its old location. If you want to check out that old location I was talking about, was mentioned in the last episode. But I did think about putting it in a suburb on the other side of the downtown, but it just wasn't working. The train line just didn't have any reason to go out that way. Whereas I was able to make that junction along that main train line, and then all these lines that come out this way, or these single lines, they head towards some factories. A couple of them will be abandoned, but I'm thinking when we do add a couple more around here, wouldn't mind seeing a train go along this line every now and again. I don't know, it might be sort of fun. Let me know if you think we should make this like sort of functional. At least one line should be functional. I don't know, that's sort of my idea. But at this stage, we just placed down a couple of factories, but we might end up doing that in like the rest of the factories in a live stream later on down the track. Alright, what we have been up to so far is I've just been figuring out that distinct line between the nice side of Springfield and the not nice side of Springfield, because in The Simpsons that line is so clear and it's mentioned so often. crossing the line and all of a sudden you're in Bumtown.
Ooh, the wrong side of the tracks.
And there is one distinct moment where they cross that train line when Bart joins Itchy and Scratchy Parade, and it's on some sort of main street, which I just assume is Main Street. So it was important for me to make sure there was a main road that crosses this train line. So I picked Main Street to do that. I felt like it was the best pick. And I thought that this would be a good spot to really show that difference between the two sides of the track. So on the left, we have this nice side of Springfield. This is close to the downtown. We got some tree-lined roads. We've got this nice garden bed in the middle of the medium strip. And I thought I'd put some awnings on some of these commercial blocks. So you'd imagine this would be like a place with cafes and restaurants and flower shops. Pretty nice. And I've even tried to make sure that the types of commercial buildings that I have chosen, you can see that there's a pretty distinct like style between the two different shop fronts. Because I think on the left hand side we've got the nice side of Springfield. You can see they're still quite vacant. They're a bit more better upkept, whereas on the right hand side in Bumtown, I would imagine that these are looking pretty abandoned. And I think what really sells this is I've even put in some of these wooden boards that board up some of the windows just so that it looks a little bit more abandoned in those locations too. And I'm going to go through and change some of the shop fronts too, so that some of them are selling some more types of things that you typically find in Bumtown, which is what I can see from The Simpsons. The Simpsons really paint this picture of Bumtown, so I'm gonna try and like stay as true to that as possible. Lots of cardboard boxes in the street, some cracked decals as well, a lot of liquor signs, something that I've also noticed, those sort of things. And it was sort of fun doing a lot of detail on these, on this like commercial block, and in between these buildings too, just some vacant lots. So you can imagine there was probably something going on around here before. Maybe these vacant lots had a shop in there, or maybe there's like a garden. But these days it's just this bit of a broken old nothing space that has nothing really between it. And I have mentioned this before, but I always enjoy building those locations. I always think the between parts of cities, in between buildings, and the difference between different locations, I think they're always the most fun places to build, because they're kind of forgotten about, and I like those locations. I think they're a little bit more interesting than, I don't know, sometimes it's building the same old commercial district. Alright, so we've got this weird transition area where we kind of have this one more block of Bumtown, and then you cross the highway and I don't really know what's going to be over there yet. At this stage, on the other side of the highway, we have this big park. I still don't really know what that park's name is. We've got a couple of park names within Springfield already that are real locations in Springfield, but that park is pretty massive. I don't really know what to do with it. But I'm thinking I might put a couple of, maybe a little bit of a neighborhood over there and a bit more factories, just to sort of blend in with the rest of this area. And I think that'll probably blend in enough for over here. But for this block, I figured this might be a good area to put down some more residential buildings, and some smaller factories and some warehouses too. And this fun road thing that I did, that I'm going to have to do this more often in places, but I felt like we didn't need this road connection connecting up to that main road. It was just another junction for cars to get backed up onto, because this is quite a busy road. We want to keep it nice and flowing with as little disruptions to that road as possible. So instead, we've just got this barricaded off two ends of the road, and I think it just looks really nice. And yeah, that's something I have to totally do a little bit more of down the track. An episode of Bumtown that I didn't know existed until I did some research, but there's this one episode where Homer goes to buy a Christmas tree, and he's a bit cheap, so he goes to Bumtown instead and buys a Christmas tree from this parking lot. So I thought we should probably do that somewhere around here. But like I said, I hadn't watched that episode. I'm really unfamiliar with the newer episodes. And when I say newer episodes, I think I probably probably stopped watching The Simpsons around season 14, maybe even earlier. And that's like 10 years ago. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with some of the more newer episodes. So I think there's probably some more references to this place, but my Springfield is based in the 90s or at least early 2000s, hence the reason why all my vehicles are from the 90s and 80s, just another excuse to use vehicles like that. I thought this would be a good spot for some more apartment blocks, which is what you guys are mentioning. We did need some more apartment blocks in Springfield, and I think they're some pretty good types of blocks we can be placing down, especially around here. I think they fit the scene really well. Who do you reckon would live there? I'm trying to think, like maybe this is where Barney lives. I reckon Barney lives in an apartment somewhere around here. His house isn't particularly that nice. And what sort of factories as well? Because I know we are placing out a couple of factories and I'm keeping them very generic at this stage. But I have left some room for some other factories. What factories can we do? I know there's a whole bunch of them. Like Springfield has a huge amount of different factories and businesses, and I just think there's a whole bunch of options we can do. For one, the Duff Brewery is not going to be on this side. It's going to be on the other side of the river. I've already got that location mapped out for there, but I know there's some more factories we can place down, or at least give names to. So we've got some ideas, just hit me up. But that's a really nice warehouse that or a nice factory that I just placed down. It's a beard monkey factory that he created a while back, maybe like 2 years ago, and I've had it in my asset collection for a long time, but that might be the first time I've placed it down. But it's great because it's this modular building that you can just sort of splice together and get some really unique different shapes, and I just think it looks great. And I've also placed down some vanilla buildings. There is this I think it might be a garbage facility, something along those lines. We needed some more functional buildings around here, so I thought that would probably be a good one too. And as you can see down in our demand bar, we do need a little bit more residential, so potentially maybe that should be the next thing we focus on, is just expanding out a bit more of the suburban areas. I think that actually might be a nice episode, because now that we've got the downtown pretty well mapped out, it might be nice to get a little bit more of suburban sprawl happening, because yeah, you can see we do need a little bit more residential. That's at this stage the thing that we need the most of. So we're now working closer to the middle of Bumtown. This is like the main street of Bumtown, I guess, and I'm sort of doing a little bit more detail around this area, thinking what sort of things would exist around this area. I think it's more of a commercial and industrial area. So I thought that this might be a good spot to place down the Junkieville Legal Center. I'm not really sure what Lionel Hutz is doing here, but he's definitely doing something pretty sketchy.
Contents of that dumpster are private. You stick your nose in, you'll be violating attorney dumpster confidentiality.
Actually, on the topic of Lionel Hutz, I reckon he might be my favorite character. At least one of my favorite characters. I think it would probably be Lionel Hutz and then Troy McClure. Like, they're my favorite all-time characters from The Simpsons. I know they're not main characters, but I always love it when they turn up in an episode. But what about you guys? What are your favorite characters? Are they the main ones, or are they some sort of obscure character? Let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to find out. So this area here, I always really love building around train lines. There's something about building around a train line. It's just super fun. I think it's always fun to imagine like how the train line has come about. Why is it over here? How is it integrated with this area? What was demolished to make this train line? What's been built around it? I don't know. It's always like a fun city planning aspects that I always really enjoy doing. So this was a good episode where I could build some really tight buildings around these train lines that are pretty close. Like, it's a pretty tight area, and I wanted to try and keep that so that we're really nice and close. And that's why I sort of think it might be nice to see some trains just driving around, maneuvering around these buildings. But I don't know, let me know. Like, maybe not. I think it makes more sense if they're not around here, but in saying that, I think it'd be kind of fun to see them. So let me know if we should actually just include at least one station. So I realized that we're doing a lot of row buildings, a lot of blocks occupied by buildings, and I thought, okay, let's actually make a park, because we do need a couple more green spaces around here, even if they're not very nice. So I made this park at the front of the monorail station, and it's pretty bad. It's not a very nice park. Some dead trees. There are some tents around here, and I actually realized I needed more tents and I needed more areas where people are living on the street, doing it pretty tough. And these tents from the Park Life DLC just do a really great job at occupying these spaces. And I just put some cardboard boxes, and I've got some trash piles too, just some random ones that do some pretty good jobs at filling in those gaps. And I did a lot of places around here with that sort of style, so I only included a little bit in this time lapse, but a lot more has been done. I also placed down Dr. Nick's billboard, and I was like, of course, Dr. Nick, he's got to work in Bumtown.
Hi, everybody!
Hi, Dr. Nick.
If he's going to work anywhere, he's going to work in Bumtown. So I did that. That was also suggested by you guys, but just something that clicked in my brain when I placed down that billboard. So gave him a doctor's facility, if you could call it that. I don't think you could probably call it that. But yeah, that's where he works. And it's like this really abandoned old building too. So it'd be like the last resort if you're ever going to go there. And now I'm just sort of going through and just figuring out a couple of the other areas, just changing them a little bit. I wanted a little bit more industry around here and some more vacant lots to show that there was something here but no longer occupied. And I thought this would be a good fit for these areas. It's particularly around the train lines too. It's actually a really nice fit for this area because we are on a little bit more of the fringes of the city, and I'm trying to make that transition from quite high density areas to a little bit more spread out vacant areas. Doing industry like this that take up, you know, in like factories and warehouses that take up whole blocks rather than lots of different smaller buildings around here. It's a really nice transition to the rest of the city, which is always a little bit tricky to do. And like I've mentioned about a billion times, I always find it really fun to do because there's nothing worse than like seeing a city just like have skyscrapers and then a road and then wilderness because it's so unrealistic. But so you have to try and think of like how that transition is going to happen when you build your city, you know, if you're going to try and build something that's realistic. And I just love doing that, figuring out what that transition is going to look like and how best to tackle it. But my friends, that is it for today's episode. What do you think? How did it turn out? There's still some areas that I'd like to work on, but I think we're going to save that for a live stream potentially, and we'll see how we end up building those areas out. But this area is starting to look pretty finished. Like, to be honest, a lot of Springfield is starting to look finished. I reckon we might work on some of the suburbs next week, or we might do a fine detailed area. I haven't quite decided, but we'll do something fun. Before I head off, I want to give a shout out to some of my patrons: Aiguille, Robin Regals, Justin Newman, Josh Wright, Eric Escobar, Mark Ma, Lewis Jones, and Clayton Boyter. Damn, I almost said them all completely correct. Colton Blotsk. That's probably not how you pronounce your last name. Sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing names, as you already know. But guys, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your support on Patreon. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!